My name is Harold Mason, and I'm 82 years old. I'm sitting alone at my kitchen table as I say this, the same table I've eaten at for nearly 40 years, and it just occurred to me last winter that I've spent most of my life confusing stability with happiness. That realization didn't come with fireworks. It came quietly, the way most true things do when you're old. It came one morning when I woke up and realized there was no one left to tell it to. I'm not telling this to be admired or pitied. I don't need either. I'm telling it because time has narrowed, and when that happens, you start sorting through what actually mattered. You don't do it on purpose. It just starts happening to you. I can feel how close the end is now, not in a dramatic way, just in the way your body stops pretending. My hands shake more than they used to. I forget words mid-sentence. Some mornings I wake up already tired. I know what those things mean. So I want to be honest while I still can be. For a long time, I thought I did everything right. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My father worked at the mill. My mother stayed home and kept everything running quietly. There wasn't much talk about feelings. There was talk about responsibility, about being dependable, about not messing things up. I absorbed that without questioning it. When I was 22, I got a job at a regional insurance company. It wasn't exciting, but it was steady. The pay wasn't great, but it was predictable. T-hat mattered to me more than I realized at the time. I remember my father nodding when I told him about the job. He didn't smile much, but he nodded. That nod felt like approval. I didn't know how hungry I was for that until I got it. I told myself excitement was for other people. Risk was for people who could afford to fail. I wasn't one of them. I needed something solid under my feet. So I stayed. I met my wife, Eleanor, when I was 26. She worked at the public library. She laughed easily. She liked walking, long walks that didn't really go anywhere. I wasn't good at walking without a destination, but I liked her, so I went. We married 2 years later. I believed marriage was something you maintained by being reliable, showing up, paying bills, fixing what broke. I was good at those things. I took pride in them. We bought a modest house, same neighborhood for decades. I cut the grass every Saturday morning. I shoveled snow without complaint. I went to work, came home, ate dinner, watched the evening news. From the outside, it looked like a good life. I told myself it was a good life. When people asked if I was happy, I said yes without thinking too hard about what that word meant. I had a job, a wife, later 2 children. No scandals, no disasters. I thought that was happiness. What I really had was stability. And stability is quiet. It doesn't argue with you. It doesn't wake you up at night asking questions. It lets you sleep. That's why it's so easy to mistake it for happiness. The years moved quickly then, faster than they should have. I worked my way up to a managerial role. Nothing impressive, but respectable. I stayed late often. Not because anyone demanded it, but because it felt responsible. I missed dinners sometimes, missed school events here and there, not all of them, just enough that they became easier to miss. I always told myself I'd make it up later. Later was a very comfortable idea. Later was where everything unfinished lived. Eleanor would sometimes say I seemed tired or distant. I'd tell her it was work, and it was. But it wasn't just the hours. It was the way work slowly became the place where I felt most competent. At home, things were messy, loud, emotional. At work, everything followed rules. You knew where you stood, you did your job, and you were rewarded for it. I didn't realize how much I preferred that. Our kids grew. I can still picture them at the kitchen table doing homework while I read the paper. I was there, physically. I wasn't absent. That's what I told myself. But I wasn't really present either. There were conversations Eleanor tried to start that I didn't finish. questions she asked that I answered quickly so I could move on. She wanted to talk about feelings, about what we wanted. I thought those conversations were indulgent. We had responsibilities. Feelings would sort themselves out. I was wrong about that, but I didn't know it then. Nothing went wrong all at once. That's the part people don't warn you about. There was no big argument, no affair, no dramatic moment where everything cracked open. Things just thinned. We spoke less, touched less, laughed less. I noticed it, but I didn't panic. I told myself this was normal. This was what long marriages looked like. Calm, predictable, uneventful. Again, I mistook the absence of chaos for the presence of happiness. The kids moved out. One went west. One stayed closer. They called. Less often as time went on. That's how it goes, I told myself. Eleanor and I settled into routines so quiet they barely registered as living. Breakfast, chores, television, bed. Sometimes she'd suggest a trip. Nothing extravagant, just a few days somewhere. I'd say we could plan it later. Work was busy. Money needed watching. Later again. She stopped asking after a while. I didn't notice when that happened. I wish I had. When she got sick, it didn't feel real at first. A cough that wouldn't go away. Fatigue, doctor visits, tests. Cancer is a word that empties the room when it's spoken. Even now it feels heavy in my mouth. I was there for her. I did what I knew how to do. Appointments, medications, insurance forms. I handled everything efficiently. What I didn't do was sit still with her fear. I told her she'd be fine, that we'd get through it. I said those things because they were practical, hopeful, safe. What she needed, I think, was for me to say I was scared too. She died on a Tuesday morning in early spring. The hospital room was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels wrong. I held her hand. It felt smaller than I remembered. Afterward, people told me how lucky we were. Long marriage, no scandals, children grown, a good life. I nodded, that nod again, but something inside me cracked open then. Not loudly, just enough to let the truth in. I realized I didn't miss just her presence. I missed the conversations we never finished, the trips we never took, the version of us that never quite got a chance to exist. That's when I started understanding the cost. It wasn't that I had failed. I hadn't ruined anything. I had simply postponed living, assuming there would always be time to come back to it. There isn't. After Eleanor died, the days stretched. Without the routines built around her, I didn't know what to do with myself. Work had already ended by then. Retirement came quietly too, a small gathering, a watch I didn't wear. I had always thought retirement would feel like freedom. It felt more like standing in an empty room, realizing you never decorated it because you thought you'd get around to it later. Friends drifted. Some had already died. Others were busy with grandchildren, with lives that didn't include me anymore. I was surprised by how little I was remembered outside of my role. Once the role was gone, so was much of the connection. I started taking walks then, not because I enjoyed them, but because the house felt too still. I passed couples holding hands, people laughing loudly. I felt invisible. I don't say that to complain, just to be accurate. In those walks, memories came back, moments I had dismissed as unimportant. Eleanor standing at the sink humming. My daughter waiting for me at a school play, scanning the audience. My son asking if I could come outside and throw a ball. I had been there for many of those things, just not fully. That's the kind of regret that doesn't shout, it whispers, constantly. There was no turning point where I could fix it, no late revelation that led to a second chance. Eleanor was gone. Time had moved on. That's the part people like to soften, but it shouldn't be softened. Some things do not get resolved. They simply end. I can't go back and ask her what she wanted most. I can't tell my younger self to slow down and listen. I can't trade my steady career for the evenings I spent distracted. I can only sit with the truth of it. Stability kept me safe. It kept a roof over our heads. It kept us fed. It kept chaos away. But happiness requires presence. It asks something riskier. It asks you to show up without guarantees. I didn't know that when it mattered. If you're listening to this and you're younger, I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't know your life. I don't know your obligations. I only know what I wish I had understood. That being comfortable is not the same as being content. That being busy is not the same as being needed. That love does not survive on maintenance alone. I wish I had asked more questions instead of assuming there would be time. I wish I had sat down more often without an agenda. I wish I had taken those small trips, said yes more easily, not because they would have made life perfect, just because they would have made it fuller. Now my days are simple. I wake up, I eat, I read a little, I take my pills, I go to bed. Sometimes I talk to Eleanor out loud, not because I think she hears me, just because it helps me remember what mattered. I don't feel dramatic about the end, just aware of it, like watching daylight fade and knowing it won't come back until tomorrow, except there may not be a tomorrow. If this meant something to you, if it stirred something uncomfortable or familiar, you don't need to do anything about it right away. Just don't dismiss it. That's what I did for most of my life. I confused stability with happiness, and by the time I knew the difference, there was no one left to explain it to. I'm 82 years old. This is the truth as I understand it now, and that will have to be enough.